those that are, you know, say the people that are saying that, is it possible that what they're really seeing, what they're really sensing is a shift in the psychic energy, the shift in the spiritual energy, a real top-down realignment of spirituality and of humanity, where we will, quote unquote, find that 100th monkey, and that there really will be a big shift. There really will be a huge change in the world, in the earth, in the universe, but it's not going to be a horrific, Nibiru type pole shift. Is it possible that the whole pole shift thing is trying to combat what's really going to be a great shift in spirituality and a great shift in human awareness, and they're just trying to get us afraid to maybe slow it down? Just a thought that popped into my head.
That's interesting. Well, here's a thought that would go coinciding with what you just said. What if, now we know that the poles are in the process of flipping, we know that, but I hadn't considered your equation to that. So what if the psychic aspect of our consciousness is going to shift anyway?
What if the psychic shift of our consciousness is what causes the poles to shift? Some theorize that every so many years the poles shift. Is that because it's a physical phenomenon that just happens, or is that because every so often we find ourselves back almost to where we were as people, and our realization, our enlightenment, our spirituality shifts and actually changes the planet?
I know the last one they said that they've recorded, they estimate, was 640,000 years ago.
Interesting.
So, and now if you take this and you really want to extrapolate further out, take for instance, when the scientists now estimate that this shift began, and this shift began 2,000 years ago is when they suspect that it began to start. So we've really been in a slow process for the last 2 millennia. We're just at the tail end of it and now beginning to see, you reach the apex and eventually you reach the tipping point. And I think that's where we are.
And it's interesting as you sit here, this is not your normal Sunday show. You think about the normal Sunday, and if we expand it to include all the Abrahamic religions, think about the Islamic Friday, the Jewish Saturday, the Christian Sunday, and there's about 4 billion people that on their Friday, their Saturday, their Sunday are involved in some type of ritual worship that disempowers them, places a man or a religion or an institution between them and the divine, and have reduced themselves to being parrots and repeating what these people are saying, have reduced themselves to doing what men say that they're supposed to do from God, listening to messages that men say they're giving them from God. And I was just thinking about those Sunday mornings way back when, Wayne, when people themselves would go out barefoot on the earth and look up at the sky. And the night times where they'd go out barefoot on the earth and look up at the sky, and they'd look at nature, and they'd see the seasons, they'd see the cycles, they'd see the changes, and where they saw themselves looking into the face of the divine in the skies, looking into the face of the divine in nature, and where they didn't need a man to tell them about the divine. They didn't need a man to tell them what to think about the divine. They didn't need a man to tell them what the divine says. They not only saw it themselves, heard it themselves, but they knew instinctively that they were part of this divinity. And wouldn't it be great if we could get back to that?
Well, you were talking, I'd be interesting to take a poll and find out how many people in the last 6 months have actually gone outside barefooted on ground, not concrete, not something that's been manufactured, actual ground. Now you get to do it because you're right there at the beach.
I think we'd be scared to death to get the answer to that question, because if you think about it, our whole society, and some will say this is a conspiracy theory, but our whole society is set up to keep you from going on the ground in your bare feet. I mean, how many stay off the grass signs do you see every day?
Oh, and you think about it, we build up, and that's where we put people up. They're never going to touch the ground because all around them, the ground has been altered. It's been hardened. Ooh, there's a good point to that. Hmm.
And I think about the military applications of the word hardened.
Yeah, yeah. Well, think about hardened of, spirit and thought. If you're never in touch with Gaia, Earth, it's very interesting going back to our days when, we attended those religious services.
And
It's
some of us even led them, Wayne. Sad to
few
say.
of us did. And, that's a strong, strong energy. I get a lot of emails to me and saying, well, you've left the Christian faith and why. But the point is that as you were talking, when you're right, nearly 4 billion people focus in on 3 days, of which there is a form of, any way you look at it, it's psychic energy that's going out from us. And we're giving that power to whatever deity that we're worshiping.
We are. And I can't help but think that, we are connected to Gaia Earth. And, when we wake up in the morning and we put on our house shoes and we stuff down some post toasties and we drink some cold coffee, and then we get dressed and we put on these shoes that are plastic and we walk across a sidewalk, get in a car with tires, drive over roads to spend 8, 10, 12 hours at a job we hate, building somebody else's dream,
Mhm.
walking across sidewalks to get there, come back out, walk on the same sidewalk, get back in the same car. You've made a great point. It is literally possible and probably true for the vast majority of people that they never step on grass, period. And they're disconnected from Gaia, they're disconnected from the earth. And in reality, Wayne, aren't we disconnected from being human?
Mm. See, that's powerful. I think that's very powerful. Think about so many of the millennials and counting downward now that have grown up literally playing video games. They don't go outside. They don't go out there and, when I was growing up, we loved going out there and playing frisbee.
What years were you growing up, Wayne, as a kid?
Um, let's see. It would have been, well, from 1960 to, about 1970.
And what would your normal, if it wasn't a school day, what would you normally do?
Well, now when I lived with my dad, we lived out in a little town called Genoa, Texas,
Mm.
and I worked for sun up to sundown. We had about a 2-acre farm and took care of, rabbits, chickens, guineas. We had 2 cows. We had an acre garden that my brother and I weeded. Um, that's what we did literally. Now, let me tell you something. I'm glad you asked this because one of my most fondest memories and all, that's when these beatings were taking place. It wasn't a good time, but the neighbors next to us had a whole acre of these giant mulberry trees. And when I say that, they grew 20, 25 feet, and they were covered with this grapevine. And this grapevine was so thick on the canopy. I remember as us kids, we would climb up and we would climb up through the canopy, and we would literally throw ourselves off the top of these trees into the grapevines. And we're 20 feet up off the ground. So
Did
that's
you
what we,
finally get to the ground or did it hold you up?
it held us up. Never had a problem. Never had a problem. Of
Interesting.
course, when I was a child, I had no sugar. Everything that I ate came out of what we grew or what we actually cultivated as far as rabbits and chickens are concerned.
Interesting. When you said that, I thought of a story that was told to me once by one of our mutual friends, strangely enough, who's no longer with us, R.W. Shambach.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was telling me one night when we were at Denny's after one of his meetings that when he was a kid, they sent him out to to his, I think it was his cousin or his uncle or something, to a farm. And he was going to spend the summer on the farm. And he said they woke him up at like 4:30 in the morning or something. And he stumbles out to the breakfast table and there's ham and chicken and, you know, pancakes and eggs and bacon. He's like, I can't eat a thing. You people are crazy. So he didn't eat anything. By
Ooh.
the time the sun came up, he was out in the fields working, and they didn't come back until noontime to get something to eat, and they didn't come back finish it till dark. And he says, I guarantee you one thing, Jeff, the next morning my plate was full.
We call that the voluntary fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Sandra says that she used to play in creeks and catch crawfish, climb trees.
Yeah.
We played on the beach. We played a lot of frisbee on the beach. We used to go out back in that day. There was a lot of orange groves here in Florida, and we would get the old aluminum trash can lids,
Yeah.
hold the
Yeah.
back of them as a shield, and go into the orange grove and have these epic battles with the oranges that have fallen down. And
Um,
Wayne, they were rotting, but if you found the right ones, they would hold together enough for you to be able to throw. And if you hit somebody with one of those, it would smack. It would just go all over them. And the good ones were filled with maggots, Wayne.
oh my goodness. And as you were talking, so I can remember the summers we never wore shoes. I
I
mean,
never wore shoes.
yeah, the hide on our heels was so thick. I can remember stepping on a broken bottle, and it cut my foot. But the hide was so thick it never got to where it bled.
It's funny you say that, Wayne. I recently was with someone in an intimate enough situation where they were able to notice the bottom of my feet, and they're like, "What's wrong with your feet?" They're like, "Do you have shoes on? They're hard. They're rough." I'm like, "Listen, man. I grew up in Florida not wearing shoes. I still don't wear shoes. And everybody's got these little feet now that probably, I guess, are soft. And, I've, it was so funny. A couple hours later, I'm walking around in the yard and I came back and sat down and I had this huge sand spur in my foot that I didn't even know was there. Had to pull the thing out with some pliers. But the point is, we were in touch with the earth.
Yeah, yeah, we were.
And look how we turned out. Maybe that's why people don't want to touch the earth, Wayne. They don't want to wind up
Or
like us.
maybe it was that spark of divinity and that connection that really had time to take hold within our spirits. If you're not connected to it at any part of your experience in the life journey, well, then you're really not part of this earth.
Sandra says I should get a pedicure. And I'm not above a good mani-pedi, Wayne. I'm really not.
Hey, listen,
Interestingly enough, I did have one about maybe 5 years ago. And I sat down, and I don't know if you've ever done it, Wayne, but you
I
sit in
did
this
it
nice,
once.
comfortable chair, and you put your feet in this little bath thing, and they swirl it around. And then these people have to be Asians. So she comes up to me, and she takes my foot out. She starts looking at it. She says, "Oh, no, very bad. $5 more." As I live and breathe, I swear that's true.
Oh, that is wild.
Oh, no, very bad. $5 more.
$5 more.
Each foot. So $10 more.
It's comfortable. I mean, but yeah, I think getting to this whole thing about, and it's how much we've just gotten disconnected. I mean, I wonder about how the early Gnostics, when Christianity was being formed, that the reason why I think that there was a blending at one time of Gnosticism, paganism, that eventually became, a religion, was the fact that people were worshiping something tangible.
What do you mean by that?
Well, here's my point. All through my Christian experience, I had an inner image of my viewpoint of God, whatever that viewpoint was. It's been very hard to describe.
Right.
It dawned on me one day sitting in a service as I'm looking around and I'm thinking, these people can't be seeing the same God I am. Impossible.
Interesting.
But my point to all this, if I have earth, and if I recognize that earth is life, because if it wasn't alive, we wouldn't be alive, and that there is an energy of a divine nature that surrounds all this, I think that that's where you really get that true connection. It becomes tangible, it becomes real. And I think today we've lost connection to that. And my point to that is that I would dare say back in the day that you could probably sit people around a fire and probably have a pretty good, reasonable facsimile of what they're looking to worship, because ground is ground.
Interesting.
Air is air. Wood is wood. Stone is stone.
And if you sat people around a fire today, what would they be doing, Wayne?
Well, if you couldn't set them, you could have them around the fire, but they're all going to be on their cell phones.
Exactly. And I was looking for mine, and
They're going to
thankfully, maybe
text
I
each
grew
other.
up at the right time. I'm never near my cell phone.
Yeah.
I mean, people call me, why don't you ever answer? Well, number one, I don't really like talking on the phone. But number two, that thing is usually somewhere where I don't know where it is. And it only has 5 or 6 rings. And by the time I've found it, the rings are over. This person whose name is I'm Canadian, sorry, A. They said, and what they be doing around the fire, their answer was drinking.
Yeah. I mean,
Drum circles. Now, I've never done a drum circle, Wayne, have you?
I can't recall now when I was at Christian youth camp back in the time. No, I don't think so.
I don't
I'd
think
like to try
Christians would
that.
do drum circles. That would be pagan, wouldn't it?
Oh, that would be pagan.
You know who does drum circles? The last person in the world that you would ever think has a drum, does a drum, plays a drum, does the whole drum thing. I'll give you 2 guesses who that person is, Wayne.
Rex Bear.
Not Rex. That was a good guess, but what's your second guess?
I don't know.
Believe it or not, Heidi Vandenberg
Really?
has a drum, does the whole drum thing, which to me blows my mind. I mean, she's the last person I would have ever thought would do that. And I've always thought, kind of silly, kind of hokey, but I'm going to have to try it out.
Vibration frequency. Yeah. Yeah. I could see that, and in fact, I think I know is in my studies is that it invoked spirits because
Yeah.
doom, da, doom, doom, da, doom. Remember the Beatles.
Interesting.
I have a 2-hour documentary in my library on DVD of how this group of Christian theologians came together and were convinced that the Beatles ushered in the spirit, they said, that altered the youth. And now hear about this. They looked at the song, The Long and Winding Road. The long and winding road.
Do you know what album that was from?
I believe it's the White Album.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about that song Paul wrote in 5/4 time. Now, most rock songs are in 3/4 time. Doom, 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 and then bum, bum, bum. I studied music for many, many years, played the clarinet, played the saxophone, played the bassoon. So that beat, that frequency is very interesting what it does to the listener. And that was part of the thing about the Beatles was their use of tones, beats, and the way the rhythms went.
That's interesting. And if you look, and I have studied the Beatles, and I wasn't really a Beatles fan. I was a real Elvis fan. For some reason, there seems to be an either or there. But I interviewed a person named Tina Foster. We kind of had a personal falling out, but her research is worth looking at. And she's one of the leading researchers in the whole Paul is dead thing. And whether you believe Paul died and was replaced or not, with the Sgt. Pepper's album, there is a distinct, measurable difference between Beatles music pre-Sgt. Pepper's and Beatles music post-Sgt. Pepper's. Pre-Sgt. Pepper's, 432, high frequency, feel-good music. Post-Sgt. Pepper, not 432 anymore, not Verdi tuning anymore, drugs, pull down, and they believe, and this is objective, it's not whether Paul is dead or not, but that change in Beatles music, which was the music at that time, had a measurable contributing effect to the spiritual declination of human psyche, human spirituality, from the let's seek God, love, sex, get together of the early 60s into the what the hell are we all doing here 70s.
Yeah, and there was a shift. And, as you were thinking, I was thinking of the on that album, Sgt. Pepper's A Day in a Life. And that's a very interesting song, and it was the way it was composed. I studied music, and the thing that I always found interesting was, for instance, Pete Townsend in his rock opera, Tommy.
I
And
remember that.
yeah, and it's the same region of the globe where this energy was coming up forth. And, we never look at it that way, but there was something that happened in that region, in that time, that was ushered in, because those men, and that's what they were, men, boys at the time, but as they were impacting, they changed. And I like how you put it, the spiritual declination of our species. That's a mouthful.
And it's true, though. Think about it. I've discovered in my spiritual work over 36 years that the 432 frequency is a frequency at which unbalanced energies, unbalanced energetic beings cannot exist in. If
Yeah.
you can create a 432 frequency, anything that's unbalanced, any energetic entity, any energetic personality, it'll either have to snap back into frequency or harmonic balance, or it has to leave. And maybe that's one of the reasons why everybody loved the Beatles so much. It's because when you listen to the Beatles, you were listening to 432. Everything that was an unbalanced, what we would call a negative energy, had to flee from you. It made you feel good. It made you feel great. And all of a sudden, here's the Beatles. And incidentally, Elvis and his lovable rebel had just been kidnapped and taken to Hollywood. And he was now a movie marionette, but that's another story. So here is these four kids from Britain making everybody in the U.S. feel good, making everybody, raising everybody's vibration. And Wayne, if you're the powers that be, if you're the controllers, you just can't have that. Something had to be done.
Well, as you were talking, look at the concerts. I lived in St. Louis when the Beatles came to Busch Stadium, and I was too young, I didn't go. But the point, when you look at those old films, there was an energy that I've yet to see be duplicated, and it was intense. And as you were saying, that 432, Tesla kept saying 432. You understand 432, you're going to understand it. He said you'll understand the frequency of God.
Interesting. And when you think about it, you think about Beatles mania, and it was all this mania. But as I remember, and I didn't follow the Beatles back then, but I remember watching the videos, and I've watched a lot of the videos. And yeah, it was a mania, but it wasn't. It was almost like an orgiastic, joyful type of mania. There weren't people getting trampled.
Mm-mm.
There weren't people getting beaten up. There weren't people. It wasn't a violent energy. It was almost like a euphoric,
It was exuberant joy.
orgasmic type of energy.
It was exuberant joy. I remember seeing Hard Day's Night
I said they like "Don't Tread on Me," so
in the drive-in with my mom, and I was in the back seat. But her and the guy who she was married with, they went and saw Hard Day's Night at the drive-in. It was a great movie. I mean, and I love the music now. Doom 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 doom, doom 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 doom. Doom, 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 doom. It's that beat. And you're right. It's upbeat. It's joyful, and it was exuberant joy.
interesting. And it's very interesting to me too that after the breakup of the Beatles, for the most part, both McCartney and Lennon went back to 432 Verdi tuning in their own individual music.
Mm-hmm. And I often
Something
wonder,
was going on. Something was going on.
I look at George Martin because he was the chef that really brought Lennon, McCartney together. What a duo! Much like Townsend and Daltrey, these combos that could tap into the ethereal plane. I mean, I saw an interview, Van
Not to be
Morrison.
confused with Darty.
Yeah.
I can't even play the radio.
Van Morrison said in a BBC interview here a couple of years ago that he said John Lennon said that he had the remarkable ability that he could literally plug into something. He knew he was plugging into something, and these rhythms would come. And then with Paul, he said that it was just Paul said it was magic, and I think it was.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yet Lennon was a very interesting fellow. And I think Lennon put together that the powers that be did something to Presley, and they did the same thing to Paul. And I think he brought that out in a lot of the album art, and John was largely responsible for their album art. And incidentally, on the Sgt. Pepper's album, whether you argue either three or four of them, but everybody else on the album cover was dead except for the Beatles, and some say even Paul was.
Yeah, yeah. It was a disappointment because right prior to Sgt. Pepper's, I think, was the Rubber Soul album, and that's just a great album. Just ladies in the Beatles, their first one. I still have it. I still got it on my iTunes. I love it, and it's good. If you want to get up and clean the house and have a good beat, do it. That's the one to do it.
Once I started doing that research, I started listening, and I love the pre-'68 Beatles music, and I really enjoy Lennon and McCartney's music after the Beatles. But I had a point I was going to say. Darn, I can't remember what it was now.
It'll come back.
It'll come back. But at any rate, whether or not you believe in the Paul dying and being replaced or not, it's an interesting study just to look at the physical changes in Paul, the musical changes in the Beatles' music. It's definitely well worth looking at. And one of the big disappointments in my life thus far, and I hope this will be rectified, is I came within about 3 days of meeting Paul McCartney. My buddy was producing a TV show that was on MTV and on, I think, the Pop Network, and McCartney was coming into the TV show for the very next taping to work with the bass players, and they got canceled. So I didn't get to meet Paul McCartney. That would have been great. And I would have, to look in his eyes and to get a read on him and say, is this Paul or is this Fall? I wouldn't have asked him directly, but I think I would have known.
Can you imagine, what was it, Coachella that last year where McCartney just showed up in a bar right outside where the event was taking place and played for, what was it, I think, 30, 40 minutes?
And I've heard he does that in New York City now and again as well. He'll just pop up and start playing.
Wouldn't you just love to know how exactly the alignment is going to work on that one? Because I would like, music has influenced my life. When I depart, when my time here is done, I'm having a smile on my face because I lived in a time, that 1970 on my own, Houston, Texas. And you think about 1970, when we lost, going into 71, Morrison, Joplin, Hendrix. We began to lose these icons that are today icons. Back then, they were just, rock and rollers. But we lived in a cultural change. I saw it in the politics. I saw it in the religion. And what a time when I look back. All I'm going to say on the other side is, wow, what a journey. If someone says on the other side, should we go in? I'm going to tell them, well, I don't know if you're going to be able to experience what I did, but it was a trip.
Literally, huh?
Yeah.
And when you start getting into the real depth of it and you start thinking about, the whole, what was the Great Falls Flag over there that started the Vietnam War? I can't remember that, but I do remember I can't remember the name of the ship and the incident, the Gulf of Tonkin incident.
Yeah.
And you know who the admiral in charge of that group was, right?
It was, who was that? It
was Jim Morrison's dad.
Okay.
It's all connected somehow. And then you get back, Charlie Manson gets involved, and it's just, man, how long have they been cooking the books on us?
Well, the 70s was a weird time. It was a shift. I grew up, I was born in 1955. In 1955, historians have said, was the most stable, most prosperous, best time in America to be alive. In 1955, we got the new concept of these things called subdivisions, where we were giving GIs the opportunity to do something that no other generation had ever gotten to do, and that was own a home. And then because of Eisenhower, as his tactical background as, Supreme Allied Commander. When he built the interstate system, they built it up for a military grid. But if it hadn't been for that, we would not have seen the growth and the prosperity in America. And then that led into a point of where we no longer had to work. The mom didn't have to work anymore, because remember Rosie the Riveter?
Right.
Yeah. The war, it at one time separated the families, but made them stronger because of the war and the pain, etc.
Right.
And then in the 60s, we get a generation that never knew, for a better word, lack or want. And here we go.
It's interesting. This thought just popped into my head as you were talking about Eisenhower building the interstate system and what that did for the country. And people don't realize this, but over in Germany, Hitler built the Autobahn system and had the same effect on Germany.
Yes. Yes.
How ironic is that?
Kind of lets you, I know this is digressing off the point, but the evidence has shown, by the way, that Hitler never died in Berlin.
If you believe that Hitler died in Berlin, you're either programmed, stupid, or just don't care.
Which bucket do you want?
Which door do you want?
Yeah. It's remarkable to see how we perceive history, even recent history. I mean, because there's people who actually believe the story that was set out. My grandparents would have told you that Hitler died in Berlin. My dad would have told you that. But now we know forensically that never happened. And so now we have, it goes to show you, Jeff, not your normal Sunday morning, how quickly all history can be altered and perceived.
And we think about when we say, we glibly will say, history is written by the winners. And we think old history, but brother, history as recent as yesterday's newspaper is written by the winners. Keep that in mind.
Have you seen any of the 10th grade American history books? They talk about,
interestingly enough, I was always interested in history. So even when I was in 10th grade, I was very interested in history. So one thing I do know a lot about is history.
Go to your library and ask them to see the current copy of American history.
Do they even teach that anymore in school?
Oh, I think it's not under American history.
Oh, it's social studies.
Yeah, I think that's what it's under. I read about the Vietnam War, and I'm going, which freaking planet was I on? Because that's not what I lived through. But the way that it's being taught now is completely different on the geopolitical purpose of why Vietnam happened. And then you get the story of what the war was doing itself. And I'm going, that's odd. I know a lot of dudes that didn't come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
And dudes that didn't come back the same.
I had a friend, Grady, that was like that. It's odd that I can still remember him to this day. He was a cool dude. He was a surfer. Went for one tour, came back. That guy, I don't know. I think what happened, I think that the brutality of what he saw, his spirit just closed off and said, I ain't going to take any more.
My uncle was, he was a senior in high school, Seminole High School, same high school that I graduated from. And less than a year later, he was a second lieutenant leading a platoon of Rangers in Vietnam. And he was never the same when he came back. Never the same. What happened over there? And one of my earliest memories is listening to the radio at my nanny's house, his mom, my grandmother. And I remember hearing that U.S. troops were ambushed by guerrillas coming out of the brush and stuff. And I remember thinking, these guys are being killed by real guerrillas. I didn't understand.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And I'm like, Nanny, did Joe get killed by a gorilla? And she had to explain to me, it's not really a gorilla. And that, Joe was going to be fine. And Joe did come back, but Joe was never really fine again. And unfortunately, he's not with us any longer.
Yeah. You know, odd that you were talking about that when we get to acronyms and names. So I was in the 70s, was very much aware of what the VC were. That was the Viet Cong.
The Viet Cong, right? The communist Vietnamese that
Yeah.
we were fighting against.
Then in the 90s, when I became involved in the tech revolution and began to lead a number of
Ooh.
software companies, you know, I remember the first time one of my board members came in and said, well, we need to go see one of the VCs. I said, why? Not knowing that, you know, venture capitalists. And as I found out, there really isn't much of a difference in the spirit.
How about this, Wayne? The VCs, and now everything has to be PC.
Oh, isn't that excellent?
Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
We all want to
Very
be
good.
PC.
Yes, yes, yes. The political correctness that has crushed free thought, that has absolutely annihilated the opportunity for exploration of thought.
Inner exploration, outer exploration, all exploration.
Yes, yes. You know, I don't know about you, but you know, I get so many people who write over on my channel, well, you really disappointed me, you know, or my expectations were better. And I'm just telling them out right out, listen, I'm not here to live up to your expectations, nor to your perceptions, and nor are you for me. So, you know, if I'm not living up to your expectations, well, cupcake, take it down the road.
Wayne, that's my line.
No, yours and I've been using it. It's like, get that out of my face.
Get that con out of my face.
Come on, man. I don't want to hear that.
And so interesting when you think about, you know, what's going on. I had somebody send me a scathing email yesterday. You're such a hypocrite. I just listened to this video of yours and you said this thing and then you did this one yesterday and it's teaching something different. You are such a hypocrite. And I went and I looked at the video that they referenced, and it was done in 2015. So I wrote him back and said, that video was done in 2015. This is 2018. Folks, if you still believe everything you believed in 2015, and you haven't expanded your beliefs, if you hadn't modified your beliefs, if you haven't come to some deeper understandings, if you're still having the same fights and battles that you were having in 2015, you haven't done this little thing that we like to call growth. So yeah, there's some things I said in 2015 that I don't believe anymore in 2018. That's not hypocrisy. That's growth.
Well, come on. I mean, it's to say that if you seriously, oh, you just something just lit off into my head. That's the problem with Christianity, with most religions, is that you're going to be exactly in the same place that you were when you came into this thing, when you start going out of this planet.
They want you to. It's designed to put you into a state of arrested development.
That's all it is. It's a
not in a Larry David kind of funny way.
No, it's not. You know, as I tell over the porch, the great thing about Jeffrey Doherty is that he will indoctrinate you. And that's the first step before I think you can get out of what I have termed the God spell and get out there and begin to think freely. People come at me and they say, well, you know, you're anti-God. No, I'm not anti-God. You know, I don't believe in the gods of this world. As I tell people, I don't like any of them.
Yep.
I'm just being honest. I don't like the Christian God. I don't like the Jewish God. I don't like the Islam God. I don't like the Hindu gods. Jeff, but I know that there is a God.
Right. I get called an atheist all the time, and nothing could be further from the truth.
No,
if you listen to me for more than 6 minutes, you know that I may be a lot of things, a-hole, jerk, ugly, stupid, but I'm not an atheist. I believe in the divine. I believe in the gods. I just don't believe in your God. I think your God is a failed, fallen, flawed, phony.
Yeah.
And like Wayne says, when's the last time your God showed up and did anything?
I swear.
When's the last time your God showed up? And I'm saying he didn't even show up in the Old Testament.
He
came and he killed all those people in Egypt. No, he didn't. Moses did it through black magic. He killed all those people at Jericho. No, he didn't. He made the Israelites do it. He killed all those people in the promised land. No, he didn't. He made somebody else do his wet work. Even back in the day, your God was a
Yeah,
coward.
yeah. You won't show. I mean, I had this imaginary script I was writing one day, and I said, "Scene, coffee shop, Manhattan. It's 6:20, and if anyone lives in Manhattan at 6:20 in the local coffee shop, you know what it's like." And I said, and God walks in, and the thing is, nothing changed because no one recognized him, and no one believed him. And the coffee went on. The baristas continued to make what they were doing. That's the thing. And I feel so bad for people who keep telling me, well, when Jesus comes back, he's going to rapture us away, and we're going to really pray for you. You had your chance. And I thought, oh, my.
Far be it for me to make a positive reference to an old Christian song. But do you remember, Wayne, that old song that B.J. Thomas, I believe, sang? If Jesus came to your town today.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Basically what you just said. Nobody would even know or care.
I love Billy Joe Doherty. I mean, let me tell you what, I've got his, believe it or not, some of his early CDs.
No relation to Billy Joe and myself, by the way.
He is, I like his voice, but you're right. It's so true. And, and today, what's left of me, Jeff, out of finally getting what I finally got this cleansing out? I'm not angry anymore. I'm just not angry.
And isn't that interesting that the God of the Bible is self-described as angry, jealous, vengeful?
And
Are you angry anymore, Wayne?
No.
Are you jealous, Wayne?
No.
Are you a person that's vengeful?
No.
It's amazing that you're not a Christian anymore and you got all of that out of your system.
Yeah. And if people knew me, and if they knew what I was involved right now, you would be, this is what some have said is a transformation of a miracle.
Absolutely.
And it's great. I go to sleep. And the great thing that I have, Jeff, and I'll just share this with you, and I know we've got over 100 plus people here, but I'm not afraid of dying. You see, I was so caught up into that mind coitus that, boy, you just hope that name really works, right? And that what that guy up on that stage said was really true. And, you play this mind game with yourself all the time. That's what I did. It was always, well, where did I sin today? Last night, we did a little thing over on my channel on smudging, cleansing. And we had a shaman from a tribe of Indians, Native Americans up in Ontario, Canada.
And the lady was a shaman, right?
Yes,
it was a lady?
Yes, Angela. And so I was talking to Sue G prior to going on, and I have to say, I want to give her credit to this conversation that her and I were having. Hear this, Jeff. Perfection. What?
I'm sorry.
What's that?
Gary Baxter says, I'm getting kind of nervous. Wayne hasn't dropped a mind coitus the whole show yet.
So, we all strive for perfection. That's the God we want to serve. We want to serve a perfect God. And we so condemn ourselves because of our imperfections. But this is something that hit me. We are actually, because of our imperfections, we are perfect. If we didn't have our imperfections, there's no way we could become perfect because we're already there. Wow. My imperfections show my divinity.
How so?
Because it shows me that which I have, whether it's habits, whether it's whatever it is, we all have habits, that if there was not the challenge of the growth of my spirit, then I wouldn't care. Because if my imperfections, if you get to the point where you go, I don't care, there's no growth. But if I say, well, listen, I used to get where I'd snap very quickly. I'd make very quick judgments.
Hmm.
Well, I don't do that anymore. Why? Well, because I understand the impact not only on me, but the energy that I'm transferring to the other individual that doesn't need to be receiving that.
Interesting. Wayne, what would you say is, if you had to pick one, what's the most debilitating emotion that humans can have?
Mm. I would say, well, I want to use two words, and I would say, I find most people have a disdain of their viewpoint of themselves. And the second one is we always doubt ourselves.
And what do you think that's based in?
Because we were taught that you can't make a decision. And if your decision is made, this most likely going to be wrong because you can never reach that point of what I call sovereignty.
Right. And so you're really talking about fear, aren't you?
Yes, fear. That and there you go. Yeah, it's fear. It's to be afraid of who I am. Wow, I just thought that.
Proverbs 1:7, Wayne. This just hit me like a ton of bricks. Do you know what the beginning of the Lord's wisdom is?
To get wisdom.
The fear
of the Lord. Yes,
is
yes,
the beginning
yes.
of knowledge.
Yeah. And didn't Paul say it's a fearful thing to be in the sight of the Lord?
To be in the hands of the living God. Why do they keep you afraid of hell? Because they can't get you into their mind coitus unless they get you fearful first.
Yeah. So
that's why they do it. The beginning of being a captive of the Lord is in fear.
Is fear. That's messed up, man. I tell you what, how many people die in abject terror?
Wayne, I got to tell you, man, even when I was a Christian, even though I was working for Jimmy Swaggart and preaching with R.W. Shambach and making 100,000 plus a year,
Jesus was very good to
praise God and pass the offering plate.
Let me tell you, I'm just going to die. Hold your thought. I was the chief usher at a church. And I had one of the ushers. The brother was 78 years old. He come back from the old Baptist background. And folks, this is the truth. He passed the plate down the aisle. And if a guy didn't put money in it, he said, "Hey, dig a little deeper."
That's like that. Did you ever see the Cross and the Switchblade, the
Yes.
Nick Cruz movie?
Yes. Yes.
It's like Creflo Dollar. He doesn't want no tinkle. He wants all crinkle. Don't put any change in there. No tinkle. Just crinkle. Creflo, I want your dollar.
I took my wife to a Branson meeting to see Kenneth Copeland. And oh, bless
Kenneth
her.
Copeland.
And so we're sitting there and he comes out and, starts talking about the offertory, how tithing. And 45 minutes later, he takes the offering and she says, "What? That wasn't even the message?"
Did he just take one?
Oh, no. By the time you get to the end of the meeting, you are all ready to go up there and empty out your checking account because God is going to return it back to you 100-fold.
Yeah. And you remember Richard Pryor, like, "We're gathered here today. We're only going to take one offering this year, so we appreciate if you give 400 or 500.
How about in the movie Car Wash, Daddy Big Bucks?
I didn't see that one.
Get it. It's a great 70s movie, and Richard Pryor plays a TV evangelist, Daddy Big Bucks.
Nice. But where else in America can a guy get on the TV whose name is Creflo Dollar?
Yes.
And say, "God wants to deliver me from flying first class. I need my own jet." And Wayne, damned if he didn't raise the money, and damned if he doesn't have the jet.
Yeah.
What is wrong with these stupid people?
Well, I have to say, I was the first one that got taken in because I paid, I guess I sent Kenneth Copeland over $20,000 uh, to help buy his first uh, jet.
Well,
Uh,
Jimmy never got 20K from me, but I was a world outreach partner for many, many years.
yeah, that Citation 10, that's a sweet jet.
You
$26 million.
gave Kenneth Copeland
Mm-hmm.
$20,000 to buy a jet.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have your own jet?
Well, no, but I was believing God for one.
Well, why the hell were you paying for his jet?
Well, you know what? I could have taken that $20,000 and bought a membership over at NetJets.
You could
And
have.
seriously, I could have.
That would have
And
lasted you for at least a year, right?
yeah. Hey, Brian, thank you. I just want to say Brian as well had the tea. I think about it all the time. So it's
What
um,
tea?
he's
And did
$2.
Rex Bear get into the place? Does this get the tea?
I don't know. We'll have to find out. But so the thing was that was because we were so caught up into this message. I mean, God is a loving God. And I never could get the distinction. Well, then is God a banker or is he a venture capitalist? What is he going to do here?
Well,
And,
God's a loving God, except for the fact he's going to burn you forever if you don't do what he says to do.
yeah. And, I have true story, folks, true story. I built a mobile payment system for churches. I was the first one. Oh, Jeff. I actually had one pastor because I wanted to do interviews. I wanted to find out how many people in your congregation had cell phones. Now, remember, folks, this was 2010. You didn't have your smartphones in 2010s.
Isn't that hard to believe? Less than a decade ago,
Yes.
nobody had a cell phone. And if they did have a cell phone, they were as big as this cat right here.
But they weren't using it for payment either.
Interesting.
So I talked to this pastor, and he took me into his office, and I couldn't believe it. He says, let me tell you why I'll never do anything where I have to do it electronically. And he pulled out his desk, and he said, this is my ledger. And he said, this is what the board sees. And then he gave me this blanking grin and gets keys out and gets into the desk and opens up this other drawer and pulls out this other book. And he says, but this is the gospel.
Oh, man, he wasn't even subtle about it.
Oh, man. I said, okay, all right. And people don't understand. I've talked to over 1,000 different pastors, church councils. And, when you do that, and particularly when you're awakening at the same time, it hits you like a ton of bricks, Jeffrey. It hits you like a ton of bricks because I had to sit back and I'm going, what the hell am I part of here?
You know what's even better, Wayne? When you're an evangelist like I was for 20 years, there's only one person to count the money, honey.
It's you.
Me. So you don't have to worry about those silly little things like financial accountability.
And I worked with the FBI, and
Please pay me in cash.
yes. We were doing. People don't realize how much money is given to churches each year. When I was actively involved, the average, and this was when the Great Recession hit, and that's when churches were taking a dive. The average take here in America for churches is over $100 billion. Each year, Americans give to churches. And in years of plenty, it could go up as high as $140 billion.
And that's just what people are giving. That's not the whole income of a church.
No, that's just what we're giving. And the crazy thing about that, still today, 30% of that is cash. You want to talk about a business, we think about street drug dealers generating cash.
Wow.
So the biggest problem law enforcement has with churches is the fact that the person that's most often arrested is the pastor's wife for pilfering. They've arrested pastor wives that have taken millions. The second one tends to be the church secretaries. The Catholic Church has a real problem in this area. But
That's why the pastor's wife doesn't complain about his mistress, Wayne,
no,
because she's getting all the money.
well, she's got one of her own.
Oh, are you talking about Jan Crouch again?
No, I'm not. I'm just
Jan
talking about
Crouch had a
money.
stable of studs, ladies and gentlemen, and we ain't talking about horses.
I sat in the house of one of the more well-known. Well, you and I know who she is.
Oh yeah,
and I won't say anything more. I mean, so folks,
right.
yeah, this is why we are where we are.
But Wayne, think about this, and this just hit me while we were talking. A casino used to be a great place to launder money, but now they're much harder on it, and you can't just take $100,000 worth of chips and get $100,000 worth of cash. There's a paper trail. But guess what? You can still take some cash into a church and put it in the offering plate. The churches are a great place to launder money.
Actually, that is and has been done. Probably still is being done.
Do you ever, you know what? This just hit me too. Now I understand why there's a Vatican bank.
Yes.
And isn't it interesting that the Vatican, Catholicism, is the de facto religion of these people that have this little thing called the Cosa Nostra?
I don't know anything. I don't know this guy.
Isn't
it interesting? Yes. And when they actually tried to
give you an offering you can't refuse.
Exactly. There was a character that ended up dead that was involved in some really funny business with the Vatican Bank. And yeah. I mean, we don't think about these things.
No, we don't.
No. And, church, religion's big business. Big business.
Yeah. And the next time that you hear your favorite preacher talking about the separation of church and state, why don't you tell them to give up their 501c3 tax exempt status? How much money do you figure is generated by religion in America in a year, Wayne? You're probably the best person.
Yeah, I can tell
to be able
you.
to estimate that.
I talked to a number of senators on this. If you take the industry as a whole, are you ready for this? It would be the fourth largest industry in the United States.
How much of a dent would it make on the national debt if the 501c3 went away?
Wouldn't do anything.
It wouldn't do anything?
Well, no, you mean we would actually tax them at a lower rate, and it still wouldn't. What religion?
So we're not losing a lot of tax revenue by them having a 501c3?
Not. Well, yes, we are in a lot of ways. Because I'm thinking you have the property, so property is tax exempt from local taxes. You get all that. It starts beginning up into the tens of billions of dollars.
Wow.
Now, the religion industry as a whole is about an $800 billion industry.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
A lot of money. And people say, well, how do you figure that? Well, you don't understand a dollar. That dollar that you give a church is going to pay salaries. It's going to be paying utility bills. It's going to be paying any number of different things.
And think about it, folks, the pastor's church or the pastor's car, the pastor's house, the pastor's clothes, the pastor's food.
Yep. And I see a lot of these churches that bring in $5 to $10 million a year. And you look at the staffing and I'm going, wow, maybe I should have applied for one of these jobs, because you're right. So what they teach in seminary is this, that if you can grow your congregation to 200 people, you will be able to generate about a $50,000 to $65,000 a year salary.
Oh, you're good. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you even get to 100, you're good.
Yeah. I mean,
people
I'm really
don't realize most churches in this country don't have 100 members.
No. The average size church in America is between 30 and 70 people.
Yep. 100's a magic number, man.
Once
you get 100, because once you get 100, you're going to get to 200, 250, 300 easy.
Yeah. The numbers become
again.
Yep. Absolutely. It's
money.
Crazy.
It's all about the money. And when you're an evangelist, and you're dealing with pastors, much like Wayne was, you get to see that seedy underbelly.
Well, they don't like you guys. Only if you can bring in a draw.
That's why, I joke, my job was to blow in, blow up, and blow out. And
Yeah.
if you're an evangelist, you got to be able to do a few things. You got to be able to preach one hell of a sermon. You got to be able to get people saved. You got to be able to get people healed. You got to be able to get people baptized in the Holy Ghost. And most importantly, you better be able to take a damn offering.
Yes.
Because if you can't, you ain't coming back next year.
Nope. Oh, and I'll tell you, I actually had a pastor bemoan to me back in the day. He says, you know what we lost? We've lost camp meetings. He said, we used to be able to get people in here for a full week. We get revival. And he said, we always got a good offering.
That was my job, Wayne. I was a camp meeting preacher. That's
there you
what
go, folks. There you go. Yeah.
I would preach these week-long meetings usually for a state or for a district, every now and then for a big church. And man, we take at least 3 offerings every night.
Yes.
At least 3 offerings every night. Think about that. If you've got, let's say, conservatively, 5,000 people in a building, and you're taking 3 offerings a night, and let's just say lots of people are broke, between 3 offerings, you're probably going to get about $20 per head.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you could probably get that, I was thinking about it, if you hit that $30 a head.
Times 5,000. I'm a Bible college graduate, not a math major, but is that 10 grand a night? 15 grand a night?
$15,000.
Times 7, because you had a 7-night meeting. 7 times 5 is 30. That's over $100,000. You only got to peel me off 15 of them $100 bills, and all the rest is yours.
So I'll just say this: in the church that I was part of back in the day, Reverend Schambach came, and when I picked him up,
RW got paid. Let me tell you.
Yes, he did. He looked at me,
and he didn't spend money on jets.
He said,
shoes, nothing.
He says, you and your wife and I are going out, he says, to breakfast after the meeting, and I want you to count the money. And, I took the money, and yeah, it's wild, folks.
Was it a Schambach tent revival?
Actually, we had him right there in our new building.
Okay.
Yeah, and he filled it out. I'll tell
You're
you
not going to tell me RW wasn't straight with money, are you?
Listen, I just counted it for him, and then I gave it to him. And I'll say this: the man was a very generous man, because when I dropped him off, he reached in to his sack and gave me $100. And folks, back in the 80s, $100 was, well, it'd go a lot further than today.
And I'll say this about Jimmy Swaggart. He, I had a lot of dealings with him, and Jimmy had some difficulties keeping the zipper on his pants in the upright position.
He's not the only first one to do that.
But I'll tell you one thing: Jimmy Swaggart was square with a dollar. And I believe Jimmy Swaggart is probably still square with a dollar. He made millions and millions of dollars on his gospel records, #1 selling gospel recording artist in history. And he never took one dime of that. It all went into his ministry. Jimmy could get 6 cents out of a nickel. So he had a lot of problems, but I don't think Jimmy ever stole a dollar from anybody.
Listen, I went to his crusade when y'all came into St. Louis back in 1981. Hotter than blazes out there.
I might have been the pre-con man for that.
You may have been, and enjoyed it. I enjoyed Jimmy Swaggart back in the day. And, and with Kenneth Copeland, Kenneth Copeland is estimated now to be worth $1 billion. $1 billion.
Wow. Gary's saying Jimmy's problem wasn't with the prophet. It was with some other word that starts with a P.
Hey, listen, throughout all the Old Testaments, I always marveled how the prophets would have sex with the temple ladies of the evening. And what was the one that in Genesis that he lost his staff? Who was that?
I don't remember that one, Wayne.
Who was it? It wasn't Jacob, was it? It may have been. Anyway, one of them who, he had to make a deal with her in order to get that staff back.
Oh, yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah. So what can I say? Yeah. It's
Isn't that
life.
something? So Jimmy was just being Old Testament, is what you're telling me.
I think so. He's human. At least the dude was. You see these men who fall from grace, and whether it was Jimmy Swaggart, whether it was Jim and Tammy Faye, whether it was who's our guy down in Dallas with
Oh, Robert Tilton.
Tilton, and then the guy who owns Daystar, Lamb.
Oh, I don't know anything about him.
Oh yeah, about 7-8 years ago, he fell. He had a little.
Well, people are, oh, how did it really affect you when Jimmy Swaggart fell? Well, when Jimmy got with other women, I wasn't that surprised because I knew his wife Frances really well.
Well, that's so. Wow, we got more people watching now when we're telling the stories of.
We called her the Ice Queen, and that was generous.
Woo! Oh,
he shouldn't have done it. It wasn't right.
I have to say, when I look back, there were some really good people. I took care of the pastor in our church and all the guests, and we had Cheryl Pruitt Blackwood come in, and former Miss America.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful, wonderful person. Just enjoyed her, and I took care of Debbie Boone. We had her in.
I remember Debbie Boone. She had some great hits in the Christian singing realm.
For the Easter service there in St. Louis. And I took care of her and the twins, and just a delightful gal. Yeah. There's some really good people. So, yeah.
I did run into some nice people, too, over the years, I have to admit.
Yeah, there are some really good ones. The problem I have, and this is my problem, there is a spiritual hierarchy here, and it ain't the good light. That's all I got to say.
Somebody says they ran into Tammy Faye Bakker at Payless Shoes.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I find that hard to believe that Tammy would be at Payless. They don't sell Jimmy Choo at Payless.
I think she's probably Jimmy Chewing.
I wonder if she really ran into Tammy
I think she
Faye.
may have. Yeah, she's on hard times.
No, Tammy Faye, I believe, is dead.
Isn't she? Yeah, she done passed away. Yeah,
but
she's gone.
There used to be these shirts that said, "I ran into Tammy Faye at the mall," and there was like a smear of her face, because she wore so much makeup.
Oh, I'll tell you, we are such a silly race. We really are, because we get so caught up in that.
But what is it about? I mean, Wayne, here we are, and we're not running churches anymore, but we've got these YouTube channels, and we're doing all that we can to try to get people to watch and try to get people to listen. And Creflo Dollar can get enough people to buy him a jet.
Yeah. Well, see,
what is wrong with people, or what is wrong with you and I?
Well, we're not offering salvation.
That's the key, isn't it?
It is. But actually we are. Because in a sense, they don't understand that it's you. I mean, listen, the Christ said the kingdom lives within you.
And so there's not any money in empowering people. There's only money in enslaving them.
Yeah, that's it. Because if you're the anointed and you hear from God, and your message this week is going to be, I know it's rough, and the devil has been attacking you, and I know that you've been there. I feel your pain. I know it's hard when you don't have the money to pay the rent, but I'm telling you, and people buy it because it's hope, and they're selling false hope. And after, you've been out there. How many millions, I dare say, that have been sitting in the seats and the services that you've had?
I mean, I still will wake up literally sometimes in a cold sweat thinking about the things that I've said to people and the things that people have done because I told them to do it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's sad. It really is. And I did it for 20 years, ladies and gentlemen.
And people,
it's rough.
It is. And, I don't care. I can take it now. I'm thick-skinned enough that when Christians, and like I said, I've got 2 videos that people don't like. Well, they don't like it, but they watch it. And that is the 2 worlds, 2 creations, and the greatest lie told humanity. And when the Christians see that, they can't handle it. Now, I showed last week the Easter service where they invoke the Lucifer blessing in the Catholic Church.
Yep.
And I have gotten so many emails from practicing Catholics today who said, where did you get this? And I give them the direct link, and they are absolutely blown away, Jeff. I have two people right now I'm concerned about, because they can't, and they went and checked it out, and they said, oh my God, you are right. The Christians are worshiping Lucifer as God. I said, yeah. So what's your problem? And the poor woman just said, but you don't understand. My family goes back generations and generations. And she said, I cannot believe that this is what we're worshiping. And I said, well, what do you think the bearer of light means? And that's what the prayer is. O Lucifer, the bearer of light, it says that you shall not see the down. Your son Jesus, who went down, is now risen up again, shall ever reign forevermore and ever. Amen, amen. And they can't handle it, Jeff.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing stuff. Wayne, do churches have ATMs now?
Yes, they do.
Are you serious?
Yes, sir. They do.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
I was part of the group that began to invent the first kiosk that were going into churches. And that was a debate that was more and more that I began to take and saying, you don't need these things in there. But yes, they do. Why? Because they want cash. They don't want checks.
That's amazing. So now the big churches have a Starbucks and an ATM.
And ATMs, yeah. I mean, it's getting weird. Pretty soon they're going to start having movies. I mean, some of these.
Wayne, you're kidding, right?
I am not.
They don't have ATMs at church.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I know the company that actually puts them in there.
Oh man, if they'd had ATMs.
Are you kidding?
I'll tell you this much: they'd have to have more than one, because I'd have had a line in that thing, 30 people deep.
Yep.
Right now, I want you to get up and head out to that ATM machine. Go to the ATM for ATM for GOD. Come on, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, our mobile app that we had, and I'll show it to you.
Oh, that's right. Now they don't even have to go to the ATM.
Yeah.
You can just give right over take out your cell phone for Jesus.
That's about what it is. In fact, our app is here, and
David used to do direct deposit to the church.
Yeah. I mean, I was told by a number of church councils that I was the Antichrist because I was bringing in the mark of the beast.
Oh, okay.
And I told one church council, I said, you don't need to worry about me. You've already got the mark. Well, they gave me the left foot of fellowship right out the door, but,
But when they found out they could get paid, it was all.
It was all like, oh, wait a minute,
Oh, we can get paid?
Yeah, it's like, oh, we can.
Come back in here, Mr. Steiner. Sit down.
I could, as we all have the stories, and it's wild. And so if people would only know our background, they could put it in better context about what we're really saying.
Wow.
So,
it's amazing. It really is.
It is. And we can go on for stories on and on with this, but it's, So this is why, this is why I enjoy our shows on Sunday morning. They are informative. They're truthful. And it's certainly not the normal Sunday morning.
No, it's certainly not, is it?
No. And we got good people in here. And, this is what I love about this group. It's really good. Is it true the origins of the word church is circus? Yes. And in fact, church is, if you look it up now, it also means government authorized. So if you have a church, it's ordained by the government.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I just did a quick Google, and it says circus refers back to the Roman, circus of the Circus Maximus, where they would do all the entertainment at the Coliseum. I don't know, Rick and Delaney Jackson. I'm going to have to check into that one more. But church is a circus now. There's no doubt about it.
Good God. It's a production. I mean, I'd
It
walk into some,
really is.
yeah, I walked out to some of these churches, Rick's Church out there in Southern California. And I'm sitting in there and I'm going, this is a production. This is a play. This is not a sermon. This is a sermon that's wrapped up into part of the play. And they had
And
a full
Wayne, that's all
production.
part of they've stepped up the fear and guilt control matrix. They've stepped up the sheep factor, because it used to be back when I was running meetings where people would actually sing songs that they could sing. They were all in C, so everybody could sing and everybody could be involved. And there would be people, someone would lead the worship that was from the congregation. Someone would lead do the scripture reading or something. Now it's all professionals. And you go into a church today, you can't sing those worship songs. They're in really high keys, only professionals can sing. So all you do is sit there.
One church had the
You're a
band
robot
up on the stage, just like I was seeing a Las Vegas production. And I'm sitting there going, really? How much is this costing? I mean, I'm going, wow. I mean, it was a great production. I mean, I got up and I wanted to clap, encore.
You are a robot more than ever.
Oh, it's frightening.
Just come in, let us eat your energy,
yes.
and make sure that you fill the offering plate.
And that's just it. Yeah. Oh, crazy, crazy, crazy.
It is horribly crazy. And I'm telling you, folks, if you're still going to these churches, you need to stop, because you're getting infected.
A Comfort, I can tell you, he's got 5 jets.
Kenneth has got 5 jets?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Creflo's got 4.
Why do you need more than one? I don't get it.
I don't know. I never figured this out. You've got not only do you have a Citation 10, but I think Creflo got the G6.
He did.
And yeah, I mean, that's an international business jet.
Man, even Elvis only had 1 jet.
I was going to say, and I went through that jet. It ain't nothing like this today, although I did think that gold-plated sink was pretty cool in there.
It was pretty cool. I just saw that not too long ago.
Yeah, I was like, okay. But
so you're telling me that Kenneth has more than one jet? Creflo's got more than 1 jet.
Yes.
So you're telling me that Creflo raised all these millions to buy another jet?
Yes, a G6.
Did he trade in his old jet?
I don't think so. I know a gal that's in the Ozarks.
So God could deliver him from flying first class.
Yeah. And she's got
God don't want his people flying first class, ladies and gentlemen.
Listen, these people, they trade jets, and this is how they'll do it. I'm up on the stage, right? Brother Jeffrey, God just told me you've been believing for something. Now, don't tell me. But I'm telling you, God has told me I'm going to give you a jet. And that's how it starts. And you'll get your first jet, which is about 1.6, 1.2 million. And I've seen it. I've seen it over.
They'll really give you a jet?
Yeah. Well, this is how it works. If you're up in their circle and you're an up and coming and you have that anointing. Yeah.
They give you a jet. That's amazing.
Yeah. I've seen it happen twice, but they've got them. They've got these jets. Yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
All I can say to that is wow.
I'm going to say, as Greg Morrison used to say on Saturday Night Live, baseball's been very, very good for me.
Jesus been very, very good to me.
Very good for me. Very good for me.
Wow.
So there we go. And that's our background. And yeah.
On a hill far away stood a brand new shiny jet.
I left, when I finally left the Christian faith, Jeff, I got to that point that I said, well, if there's a heaven in the way that they're designing it, well, hell, you're never going to get to the penthouse.
No.
And it reminded me of the Egyptian story about Osiris crossing, the river Sphinx and making sure that she had jewels that she could dissuade, the guard or the keeper.
Jesse Duplantis.
Oh,
Even when I was in the church, I knew he was crooked as a dog's hind leg.
he
Funny.
is one of the funniest. He should have been, what group was it that he played with?
I don't
Deep
know, but he's
Purple?
crooked.
He played with one of the rock bands. He was a superstar back in the day.
Really? I didn't know
Yes.
that.
Yeah, yeah. He was a person who took a lot of LSD and got saved. And
No kidding.
yeah, yeah. And literally gave away over a couple $1 million. But the guy is, you got to admit, he is just one funny dude, and he's got a
He's
knack for
hilarious.
business. I mean, what he's built there in Sidale, Louisiana, is a palatial. People ought to go there and check it out sometime. It's
So
weird.
all of these jets, and people are speculating about the Christian Mile High clubs.
Oh, yeah. I think they invented the Mile High Club.
They might have. Man, that is just, it's
It's
crazy. It really is crazy.
It is. And, I see so many people, there's good people that, causes like yourself, men and women who bring this message out and have made the sacrifice to do this as a way of life. And it's tangible. You can see what a gift does. And so often when people go into their churches on Sunday and write their tithe checks, I can tell you all the schemes that they're using today. Why? Because I was the guy who began to plant the seed in the churches and said, hey, listen, this is what you need to do. Now that then I tell them that you can do electronic direct deposits. What you need to do for your congregation is that I'd look at the demographics of the congregation. I could immediately get what their economic profiles were. And then from there, I could determine what their base incomes were. And I could ask the pastor, are you instituting the tithing principle? And then this is what I would tell them. Don't take an offering during church, but what we're going to do, you take an automatic deduction out of their checking account when they get paid on Fridays. And that way you get the full tithe.
Wow. Bring ye all the tithe into the storehouse.
It's a scam.
It is a scam.
What did I do? I was able to increase churches' overall take by sometimes as much as 27%.
Wow. And you only wanted a small percentage of that.
All we got out of that was just less than 2%.
Oh, the processing fee?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow.
One guy, I was at a church in Delaware, and I know we've really gone over on this, but so I went in there and was telling people about, how mobile giving works and why you need to start looking at electronic giving. And one guy stood up, older guy, and said, let me ask you something. Now, these were all black people. I was the only white guy in there. And he said, what makes you so righteous that you can take 2% of God's money? I said, well, sir, the Levites took 10, so actually I'm a bargain for God.
Oh.
That man come up and hug my neck.
Wow.
And I swear, this is what he said. You're the first honest white man I've seen. He said, I'll support your situation, your business here.
Wow. Wayne, sometimes I feel there's some times and some days where I feel like maybe there's a chance. I feel like Jim Carrey. So you're telling me there's a chance.
There's a chance.
Sometimes I think there's a chance. And then sometimes I sit back and I realize the billions and billions of dollars and the billions and billions of people. And I sometimes wonder, is this too big of a monster to fight? Am I just tilting at windmills? Can we ever really bring this down? Because it's so intertwined with government. It's so intertwined with culture. It's so intertwined with finances. And I'm wondering, will it take the collapse of civilization for the church to fall?
Two things. You're the tip of the spear, and you're the virus. And right now, your efforts seem like they're minuscule. But in fact, it's starting to actually congeal. And I think that I'm seeing more and more people leaving the church, and they're confused. They're obviously bitter and angry, and we, I think, represent at least a refuge temporarily for them to be able to have some place where they can at least begin to understand how they got there.
Yeah. Gary Baxter says Don Quixote. I'm reminded of Val Kilmer in Tombstone. Well, look, darling, an educated man.
Indeed.
That's good.
We
That's
love
good,
them.
Gary. That's good. Yeah, I mean that's true. We just gotta keep
Yeah.
going. Got to keep doing.
Yeah. Your
Got to
message
keep
is resonating, you know.
Just got to keep doing it.
Yeah. And, you know, we are forming a community here. It's quite amazing when I step back and see what's going on.
It
And
is interesting, isn't
it
it? It
is.
is amazing.
Yeah. You know, I feel like we're making a beautiful, beautiful dessert where you got the swirls, you know, the chocolate and the vanilla,
Yeah.
and it's beautiful.
You know, I worked. We'll try to close with this. And of course, you know what it means when a preacher says "and in closing," right?
Yeah, and now you really got another 10, 15
It
minutes.
means absolutely nothing. But I worked for Pat Buchanan for a while, and this, you know, I left organized religion to go work with organized politics, which
There you go.
I don't know which one was worse, but oh shoot, what was I going to say about Pat? I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. It happens. Pat Buchanan, best
Anyway, I lost my
conservative
train of thought.
right-winger that I've ever known.
The original Donald Trump.
Exactly.
People don't realize that he was the original Donald Trump.
Oh, it's crazy. Well, you know, this has been fun, and obviously the people have enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Well, at least we tell them, you know, authentic, you know.
Oh, what Pat was saying was that, you know, this was America first. This was Make America Great Again, but it was 1992. So it was just too early. It was exactly Donald Trump's message that he won with this last presidential election, but it was just too soon. And Pat said, he used to say that we were the people with the torches, with the pitchforks, with the clubs, trying to get across the moat at the castle so we could storm the gates.
Yes.
And that's what we are right now spiritually. So light your torch, grab your pitchfork, grab a club. If you don't have one, grab a stick, and we'll meet you at the bend in the road, and we're still going to storm that castle, even if we got to swim the moat.
Hell yeah. If we have to, we'll step on the alligators as stepping stones.
I don't think Pat was deep throat, Leslie, but that's many people have speculated that.
You know, it's always been the question, though, who was he? You know?
Yeah. Pat's about the only one that came out of there smelling like a
out,
rose.
Yeah, he did. He came out unscathed, you know?
He's also the one that marched into Nixon's office and said, Mr. President, you've got to go. You've lost the moral authority to lead.
He did. I mean, the man had a set of brass cojones, you know, because Nixon, yeah.
Pat still does. I mean, Pat's a good guy. I mean, he's as Catholic as the day is long, but there's a man that believes in what I would go with Rick. Rick says it was Alexander Haig. I would believe Haig before I'd believe Buchanan.
Yeah, boy, you know what? That's a good point. I think Haig, yeah, Rick, I agree with you. He has the profile for it. He would actually do it.
Oh, Haig would volunteer for it.
Well, hell, you know what? When Reagan was still alive, he just got shot. You know, Haig's going in there and saying,
"I'm in charge here.
I'm in charge. Screw the Constitution." It's like,
but actually, people don't know this, but the guy that was the original guy that was offered the leadership of the Whitewater mission was Buchanan. Pat said, no, you got the wrong guy. And then G. Gordon Liddy said, I'm in charge here.
Yes, he did. And I'll tell you what, now we're going back, but Liddy, now that was seriously a spook.
Did you ever hear his radio show?
Yes, I did.
He was so entertaining to listen to.
Man.
Virile, vigorous, and potent. I'm G. Gordon Liddy.
You know, the man had the command of language.
And what a mustache.
Yeah. I can't grow them. I mean.
All right, Wayne. It's been an hour and a half, more than that. We really need to go.
All right, buddy. It's fun. Hope everyone's had a good time.
Absolutely. So keep fighting the good fight. And I mean, I was once a part of Buchanan's brigades, and I guess now we're part of the Gospel Truth Army, and it has been another great Sunday morning. So
Doing good.
keep on fighting, ladies and gentlemen. Don't lose heart. Don't lose faith, because I really believe that in the end, we're going to win. What do you think, Wayne?
I am agreeing. You know, I used to be a person of the doomsday. I thought, screw it, it's all over. But you know what? We're going to be that remnant. No matter
Absolutely.
what happens, no matter what steamroller comes or doesn't come, there is still going to be the remnant, and our voices are getting out there, Jeffrey.
Absolutely. So go to R. Wayne Steiger and subscribe. Go to Heidi Vandenberg, Channel 27, Rex Bear, Leak Project, Trisha G, Sandra D'Angelo, Overwatch Channel. Who am I forgetting, Wayne? JennyMoonstone.com.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
There are a lot of them.
There's a lot of them, folks. This is the place to be at.
I was told it's a click, Wayne. Why are you guys such a click?
Because we click.
Boom.
That's
Heather
it.
Cooper and Jeff, I'm in Tampa this weekend. Can I get some rods?
Well,
send me an email, Heather. ChristianWhistleBlower@gmail.com.
All right, buddy.
All right, Wayne.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye to everybody. We'll see you next time. And thanks for being here, Wayne. Thanks for being here, too. I'm going to go ahead and step out and try to get to the restaurant while they're still serving pancakes.
Get out there, buddy.